So typically, when you approach content creation, most of the time you feel like I only have 5 minutes today to get an Instagram post out, or maybe I have 10 minutes to record and edit a quick TikTok video. And it seems like that's all the time you have, and that's all you can dedicate to content creation. And you might not think that you have time to sit down and plan out your content, but let me tell you, planning out your content is actually a huge game changer. When you sit down to plan out your content, there are actually 5 different things that I think you should avoid. So let's dive right in. Number one, I actually want you to avoid creating on a whim. And what I mean by creating on a whim is kind of what I described in the beginning of this video is thinking you only have 5 minutes at the beginning of your day, or thinking you have to wait until the end of the day when you have some free time and you have like 10, 15 minutes to create a TikTok video. I actually want you to avoid doing that. And here's the thing. Yes, you can go and create content on a whim. That's totally fine. Like jumping on Instagram stories, jumping on a trend, or just having fun with your content in the moment. That is totally fine. What I mean when creating on a whim is we don't want to do that consistently day in and day out, and that's your content strategy. There is power in planning. So when you sit down, let's say you even have 10 minutes on Monday morning to plan out all of your content for the week. And again, we're just planning. The first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you're reviewing your strategy and your analytics. So reviewing your strategy, you want to see how many times you want to post. You want to see your overall goals. Like, is this YouTube video that I'm creating helping me hit those business goals? Maybe I was wanting to have 500 new subscribers by the end of 2023. Am I working towards those goals? Have these videos been helping me do that? If they are, cool. Continue on with planning my content. If they haven't, if we seem a little behind in our goals, or maybe we're not quite doing everything that's in our content strategy, we might need to make shifts as we plan our content. And again, you can do that through looking at your analytics and just kind of reviewing your overall strategy. It can be really quick and just taking a look at all those things that you need to accomplish. And then moving into the next part, you need to review your content calendar. And what this is going to look like is making sure you don't have major holidays or launches or campaigns or even vacations. Yes, you got to build that stuff into your content calendar, and your content strategy is knowing when those things happen. So for instance, when you sit down to plan your content out on that Monday morning, and your weekly routine Instagram live that you do every Wednesday can't happen this week because your kid has a doctor's appointment, you can start to plan accordingly. You can post content saying, hey, this week I'm not doing this, or supplement it with some other form of video. Again, there is power in the planning. So make sure you're taking the time to even just plan out a quick structure, some ideas, that you aren't creating on a whim every single day, because creating on a whim can actually just lead to a lot of stress. Number two might sound simple in theory, but I see that a lot of small business owners go wrong here, and it's avoiding multitasking when you're planning that content. So first and foremost, I kind of already alluded to it, but you actually need to set aside time in your calendar to plan out your content. And I mean actually setting a meeting with yourself. By setting a meeting with yourself or putting aside that time in your calendar, you're going to ensure a couple of different things. First and foremost, it's going to help you avoid the multitasking. You're not sitting there scrolling your phone. You're not going through emails. No, you have a 15-minute window where you are dedicated to just planning out your content for the week, for the next 2 weeks, for the next month. You don't need to focus on the end piece of content here. This planning session is simply to get your ideas out there, to kind of brain dump things. And at the end of that planning session, take some time and put it on your calendar again. Maybe it's a repeat task. And then at the end of your content planning session, you can then take some time. It literally can take 30 seconds to then plan and put a task in your project management system, put more time on your calendar to actually execute those ideas. Kind of going back to point number one, let's say you want to plan out your content Monday morning for the rest of the week. And you're like, Amber, batching content doesn't work for me. I'm more of the create content on a whim. Well, maybe you could every day or two sit down, you're like, okay, at least I have some ideas. I have some thoughts planned out. And then you can kind of create them more in the moment, or maybe a day or two in advance. So you can start to see how these things that you want to avoid can kind of stack on top of each other to just kind of help them whole content planning process way easier on you. Number three, I actually want you to avoid your phone notes app. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes if I'm out and about and I'm busy and some kind of content idea comes to mind, I will go into my notes app and just jot the idea down. But I don't want you to do all of your content planning inside your notes app. You can find a system that works. It can even be pen and paper. My preferred method is Airtable. But basically, you want to avoid having everything living inside your notes app, because let me tell you, I am the first person to lose content ideas. accidentally delete a note, things get buried. And I can promise you now that your content, your great content, is going to get lost in there. So at the end of each day, I check my notes app to make sure I didn't dump random ideas in there. And if I did, if I left a content idea in there, I make sure I get it into my system so that Monday morning when I'm ready to sit down and kind of plan out maybe my videos for the next week or the next month, I have everything inside of my system and I'm not just kind of relying on these haphazard notes where like I don't know where anything is. Number 4 might be a little hard to hear, but you actually want to avoid consuming too much content. I get it. You want to go on TikTok, you want to go on Instagram, and you want to scroll for inspiration or ideas or for trends, but this can actually be really detrimental to your planning process. Listen, I've been there. I've done it. I go onto TikTok and I'm like, let me find a trending audio real quick. And I just scroll and I'm trying to find a trending audio and 30 minutes have gone by and now I'm just deep in a TikTok rabbit hole. I haven't thought of a single content idea, I haven't planned a single thing. And this can also just lead to a lot of other things like comparing yourself to other creators, or maybe it hinders your creativity like it does for me. One thing that I peeled back on this year is over consuming content like podcasts or courses, because I ended up finding that it would just kind of dull down my content, or it would make me so stuck that I just wouldn't produce content at all. Like my brain was in overwhelm. And then when I am feeling like the need to scroll for inspiration, if I really feel like I need to just kind of see what other people are doing, whenever that like mindset comes up, I like to consume content from creators that are outside my industry just to see what's working for them. I find that way more inspiring, way more fun, and I always tend to take pieces of what they're doing right and kind of develop it into my content. And lastly, this is more of a mindset shift, but it's actually really important, is I want you to avoid thinking that every single piece of content needs to be so profound. This is one thing that I've had to work on, is I thought every piece of content had to be so hard-hitting, perfectly edited, the best graphic in the world, the longest video. And I had to deliver like this perfectly poetic message. And that is what gets you stuck in not posting or not creating at all. Your social media content isn't here to win Nobel Peace Prizes. It's not here to be like over complicated or so hard for your audience to consume. Your content is here to deliver a message to your audience that they're going to resonate with. A message that they're going to understand. And that can be as simple as, hey, this is my thought. This is something that popped into my brain that I want to tell my audience. Rather than maybe jumping on Instagram stories like you normally would, let's say you're like, okay, on Tuesday, I'm going to make it go out as a thread. And then I'm going to screenshot that thread so on Wednesday, I can post it on Instagram. And then maybe if it did well on both those platforms, you're like, I could use that thought and talk to my audience through a video and post it on TikTok. It can be that simple. So now that we've run through some things to avoid when planning your content, I actually want to make planning your content a whole hell of a lot easier. You guys can head to the description below and find my new free Airtable content planner template. Airtable is a tool that I use to house my content system that helps me create content on a daily, weekly, and monthly, and quite frankly, yearly basis. And I've created a really easy, streamlined way for you to plan your content in a very similar system. Other than that, I'll see you guys next week, and don't forget to hit subscribe.